Alright, let's look at materials now. So materials only work in combination with SOPs, and materials themselves actually work on the GPU, and so they're pretty powerful, and they kind of work in a combination of tops, SOPs, and rendering, and yeah. So let's look at how to do that. So first we need to actually set up a render network. So I'm going to drop a sphere in here and a geo and a camera, a light, and a render top. And then I'm gonna, as always, add like a transform top here, change this, and add a null. Okay. So that's a very simple render network, and we don't really need more. I'm just gonna zoom out a bit. Okay, let's also change the detail here. So let's change this to like 200 by 200, and let's also turn off all of these. I can just right mouse click on all of these, and then also press Control to select or deselect others, and then I can just click on the viewer off. Okay, so how do we apply a material? So I've quickly shown that in the last video of the point sprite. Let's look at that more closely now. So let's say I just want to have one color for all my for my complete geometry. I can now add a constant material, and with any material you just drag and drop that on there. In this case I'm not using, you can also use a null for materials, but I barely ever do. But let's just do it for the sake of order, I guess. So we can just drag it on there, say par material, and now we just have like this color on there, and we can change the color here, but we can't really see that it's 3D anymore, because this is not using any specular lights or any kind of shadows. So this is really just the same color for the complete geometry. And in this case, if we like deleted the light, it doesn't make a difference for the constant. So we also have the option to change the alpha here, and as you can see, it's going to complain here. If we middle mouse click on here, we're going to see it says possible transparency issue, blah blah blah. So we can go like to fix that. We can go to the common page and turn blending on, and there's quite a few options there that we're going to look at a bit later. Actually, I don't think I'm going to look at that right now. It's not very important right now. But it's important that when you change alpha, you always need to turn the blending on. Alright, let's get to the next material, which is a wireframe material. So this is just going to do the same thing as when we turn the viewer on here, make that active, and then press W. Oops. Oh yeah, we have a lot of stuff going on there. Let's actually change this so we can see this more nicely. So we have these bones kind of going on there. So with the wireframe, we're doing the same thing. So we can just do that, put that in there instead. And I'm going to change this to topology wireframe, so we don't get these diagonal lines. And it's pretty much the same thing here. We can change the color, and we can adjust the alpha. Again, we're going to need to turn blending on. We can change the line width, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The thing though is I barely ever use wireframe now because of two reasons. One being that we can, with any other material, we can go to the common page and turn the wireframe on here, and then we have pretty much the same options. And on some other operators, like other material operators, we even have more options than the wireframe. So yeah, also there's like the line mat, which I'm going to show you now, and the line mat kind of does the same thing, but also a lot more and a lot better. So let's drag that in there. It doesn't look like it's better at first. That's fine. So what the line mat is doing, that it's working with depth. So it's like working with near and far values, as you can see here. So we can like change both the distance, so how far actually is, and then we can define how, like, the width of the lines when they're near or when they're far. So we can make like closer ones thinner. It's kind of hard to see this way. Doesn't matter. So we can change the width here. We can go to the line tab and change the color, for example. So you can make the near ones blue and the far ones like pink. So I'm gonna have to change this a bit, so to better see that. All right, there we go. So now the far ones are kind of pink and the near ones are blue. And we can, if we turn on blending again, we can now change the alpha of the near ones or just the alpha of the far ones. Yeah, so as you can see already, we have a lot more options than just on the wireframe. And we also have the option to turn this off and on, and then turn this on and off. So we can draw points at where the points are. We can just turn off the lines, and then we can just see the points. And obviously here you can also change like the color, which is kind of hard to see right now. But yeah, so there's a lot of room to play there. And the last thing we can do on here, there's more options, I guess, but you can also draw the vectors. So this is the same as if we draw these vectors here. So they're gonna be displayed that way, and we can turn on all of these, and as you can already see, there's some cool stuff going on there. And we can now, for example, oops, we can type in again apps time.frame here. Maybe make this a bit slower, something like that. And now we can see we have this cool sphere, and like this is really like kind of, as I said, we're using the sphere just as a base, and then we're kind of shaping and shading it with the line material. In this case, we're gonna look at other materials in a second, but yeah, you can already have a lot of fun with this. Let's now look at the Phong material. So this is probably the material I'm using most often. So I can just drag that in here, and now we just see our sphere again first. Okay, so what we can do here, we have these options for like diffusing and specular lights and that kind of stuff. So we can change the color of the diffuse, and as you can see, it's different from the constant in the way that we can still see the light. So if I deleted this light, we're not going to see anything. So this is really just kind of reflecting the light in a way. You can also change the specular on there. So this, I don't know how to explain that. I guess kind of get what that is. And obviously this all changes when we change where the light is at. And now let's also change the rows and columns to something higher again, so that looks smoother. We can also change the specular light color. So yeah. And we can also define a constant, so there's like always this kind of like independent of the light, there's always going to be color. It's kind of the same, or pretty much the same as this. All right, let's look at the maps in a second. We can also change the alpha here. We turn on blending. And we can also define a rim light. a rim light is, it's back to 1, kind of just this second light that's that we can just control here, and it often looks really nice to actually use that. We can change the color here. As you can see, this already looks quite pretty, even though it's just a simple sphere. Yeah, so you can change that, mess around with that. Let's look at the maps now, because that's like the fun part of the Phong. So we can use, I'm gonna create a noise here, a noise top. I'm gonna make the resolution a bit higher. And I'm gonna, yeah, just, we can change this in a second. I'm gonna add a null here. And also with the middle mouse, I'm gonna also add a normal map. Okay, so on the Phong we can now, like if we have the Phong selected, we can now drag this onto the color map. And now we can see we're using this as a map for like that. We're just kind of putting this onto this surface of the geometry. So as you could see just now, if we just go faster, there we have this kind of problem there, and that's kind of hard to fix, but that's okay. We can just kind of work with that right now. Oh, we just kind of turn this off and then we don't see it. That's how I deal with my problems. Let's put this on the normal map, but like the normal on the normal map bump. And then we can already change this a bit. So you can already see there's some 3D going on. If we change this something higher, it's a bit overdone now, but you can see what's going on here. We're kind of like, without actually moving in the, God damn it, it's still complaining. Oh no, I'm gonna look at that in a second. Without actually changing anything in the 3D geometry world there, we actually create some kind of 3D by just using tops and then materials. So this, or you can already see this is great. This is explained as complaining, because we're normal mapping, but it doesn't have tangent attributes, which it needs. So we're gonna need to insert an attribute create here, and then turn on the tangents. You can see this kind of changes, and also this doesn't show a warning anymore. All right, so we can go further down the road here. We can turn on enable height map and then use this as a height map. So now 3. And we can already see with the parallax we can do some fun stuff. I'm gonna turn this down though. We can now also turn on displace vertices. And now there you go. This is like, I guess probably the first time in the series that we're actually creating something very cool. It's only been a few hours. So we can like go all the way with this, like out. We can also go higher with this. At some point it's not going to look great. And like the amount of detail is kind of due to, or like connected to how many rows and columns we have. So if we make this higher, then you're going to see more details. But if we then animated this, it's going to be slower. But we can actually now go to the noise here and a transform, which we did in the tops tutorial as well. And again, type apps time.seconds in here, like maybe type times 0.1. And now you can see this is animated and it's still running smoothly at 60 FPS because we're working with materials and not working with SOPs directly. So you can change anything about this. Feel free to play with this because it's a lot of fun. You can also make this colorful as a color map, but it actually doesn't look that good right now. And yeah, so you can play with this. For example, we could now, just so you can kind of see how you can use chops with this, would be that we can just change this to a Gaussian, and now we just have like a number that's going between 0 and 1, up and down, now we can make this viewer active and drag this onto here. And now we're controlling this with chops. So maybe that kind of helps you to understand how you could use that. Yes, cool. You can also go down with the bump scale here. It looks a bit better maybe. Yeah, just have your fun with this. And the last thing we're going to look at now in the material world is the PBR mat. So the PBR mat is really just a different kind of how's it called? I just looked that up. It's a different model, exactly. So it's a different lighting or like shading model. So this is like based on the Phong, as you can see here. It's like Phong. The other one is how's it called? Physically based rendering. So for that, I'm gonna drop a PBR in here, and then put that onto here. And for PBRs, we usually need an environment light, as far as I know. I haven't worked that much with PBR, so correct me if I'm wrong. Alright, so for the environment light, you also need an environment map that you can see here. If you also double click on it, it says please add an environment map. Asking you very kindly to do so. So let's add a movie file in and go to click on this plus, and then we're going to be directed to this maps folder, and now we can just use this cloudy ocean file here and connect this to null and then put that in here. Or we could also drag it on here and say parm environment map. Alright, so now we can see we kind of have this. If I go down with the metallic and roughness, actually just the roughness, now you can see this is kind of being reflected onto there. So if that's something that you wanna have, that's also cool. But that's not what I want to look at right now. We can go to the maps here. No, actually, yeah, and we can add a substance top, and that's where the PBR kind of shines. So for now, we just have kind of similar options here. We also have a rim light and that kind of stuff. We have a bit different options to the Phong, but it's not drastically different. But when we use the substance top, that's where it becomes interesting. So we need to drop a substance top to do that. And let's just drag this on here and use that as a substance top. So not very interesting first, because it's just the graph is just set to simple. Can now change this to concrete. And let's also go to the comment page and change this to higher resolution. Alright, there you go. We now have like a more realistic looking texture on there, and we can also change like these values. The changing of this is very slow, so be aware of that. So you can't actually use this, for example, and put it on there. That's not going to work with substances. You can't change them in real time, unfortunately, but they're still pretty cool to work with. So these input values, the options that you have, are dependent on the kind of substance that you're using. So you can also use metal. It has different kind of options here, as you can see. And we also have wood or psycho. I don't even know what that is. That looks very strange. But yeah, anyways, why is it complaining now? It's okay. Yeah, so that's one way to go. We can now enable a height map and use a substance select here and drag this on there. You can't actually connect that, and now select the height, and now we can put that in there, and now we can turn on display vertices, and you can kind of do the same thing. They can just displace this whole thing if you wish to do that. Okay, So we have like a rock here now, which is great. And one last thing, we can also use a different different material. So we can go, like, you can just download stuff. I'm gonna link that in the description. You can download different substances, and with different substances you have different looks and also different options here. So you can change the way this looks here. And as you can see, that's super slow. I'm gonna turn the displays off, or just very slightly, something like that. Okay, cool. So I think that's about it for the materials. And as I said, they're a lot of fun. And for the Phong, if we just put that back here, you can also obviously just use images. You can use any kind of top input. You could use your camera for that. You can use whatever you want. Anything from top world you can use as a material here. And that means you can, I don't know, do any kind of thing that you want to do here. So I could use a level, and with the level you could, I don't know, change how this looks as well. So I don't know, blur this. As you can see, this is very powerful. So one last thing here before we end this. You can add a grid instead and drop that in here. And now this whole thing is happening to a grid or any kind of SOP. And again, you need to change the rows and columns. And we could change like the camera. And yeah, that's pretty sweet. Alrighty, that's it for the materials. We're gonna look at DATs and then comms in the next videos. See you there.